We are so excited to kick off the next class in our series of master classes as part of Cantu Elevate. And for those of you who aren't aware of what Cantu Elevate is, it's Cantu Beauty's initiative to help Black female entrepreneurs navigate today's marketing landscape using strategic digital tools customized specifically for beauty businesses. So, that is right in our field. It's a beautiful, perfect partnership with BrainTrust Founder Studio, and we are so honored and thrilled to be a part of it. The overall programming is, these series of master classes. We have all of our pitches going on virtually and then some live at our Founders House event on 4th of July weekend in New Orleans. We're so excited. The winner of the pitch competition will win a $20,000 grant, which is amazing. So we're super excited to bring you guys cash, resources, and just all of this knowledge that we have. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and thanks in advance to our experts for being here. They have a wonderful class prepared for you guys on brand and creative strategy. So just to hop in with a few quick intros of who we have on the call here today, I've got Elizabeth Cates. She is the vice president at the Sasha Group, which is a VaynerX company. And then with her, I have Jess Friedowitz, who is our VP of UX and Web Strategy at the Sasha Group as well. We're so excited to hear from them. They've got about 60-ish minutes of content, maybe a little bit more, and then we'll have some Q&As at the end. So as they're going through the materials, please, we encourage you guys to be super active in the chat. Please throw out any questions that you have, any comments, send us some nice emojis, some nice thoughts. I want some comments on my earrings today, like anything you guys have to say. We really want to make this interactive and a great experience for you guys. Incredible. So with that being said, I will go ahead and hand it over.
Amazing. All right. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. And you just see my screen, right? You don't see all the junk below my screen. Yeah. Awesome. Good. All right, good. Well, I'll kick us off here. I'm Elizabeth. Appreciate you guys all taking the time to come here. We're so excited to be part of this program. And as the Sasha Group, which is sort of an entrepreneurial and consulting arm of the VaynerX family. If you're familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk, our founder, we really do focus on helping brands who are in anywhere from a beginner stage, an entrepreneurial sort of like just a startup stage, all the way through fairly well developed companies. We work with large sort of Fortune 100 clients as well on a project basis. So excited to have you guys here and to share our knowledge. Jess and I, as Gigi said, we both work, oh, why is this not moving? Okay, got it. We work on lots of accounts. Primarily, we work with the PDC group, which is Cantu, who is sponsoring this program. And really, that's why we are here to kind of share what we work with them on and really focus on how we can help share the knowledge that we have to help you grow your business as well. What we're going to focus on today and really kind of cover in the next 60 minutes-ish is, defining brand. So first of all, we're going to dive into the fundamentals of building brand and really consistency and relevance across who and how you're talking about yourself. We'll then kind of dive into the framework of making content. So functionally, we'll talk a lot about the structure of how you put strategic content together. We'll give you some sort of tools and tricks on how to do that. And then additionally, kind of considerations on how to create a volume of content that we really feel like is an important part of really connecting with that audience that you have. And then we'll dive into the platforms, best practices there, and how to maximize your efforts in that area. We'll cover YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter on that. And then community management. So why does your community matter? What are things that you can do to help really maximize those efforts and to connect with your followers? If you could remain on mute, which I think you're already automatically on mute, open-minded and respectful of what we're doing here. And if you've got any questions, of course, please shout those out in the chat. And then if you've got any feelings or reactions, as Gigi said, please put those also in the chat. We're here to interact and answer questions. We will answer questions at the end, so we'll go through everything. And if there's something that we want to cover while you throw it in the chat, we will definitely do that if we see it. But we can always go back through and make sure we get all of your questions answered. And then we are always here if you have questions after the session. Cool. All right. So let's dive in. Defining brand. We believe that brands have two things in common. They're consistent and they change. So how do we really think about building brand? How do we consider, the consistency of what a brand is, which is really being, fairly consistent, to use the word once again, with all of the things that you're putting out into the world, but really with an eye on what's happening in time and relevance and the zeitgeist, what's happening in the world that really informs what's going on with your consumer, but also what's going on that you have a right to be involved in the conversation. So really we start this process with, asking ourselves some key questions around what is the right way to really consider where you should be and what you should be doing. So why do we exist? If a good question when you're kind of looking at the structure of your brand and really is it in the right sort of health space for what you're doing? What are you doing for your consumer? And if you didn't exist, what would be missing in the world? I think that really is at its core where strong brands are built, is they understand why they exist. They understand why they exist. They exist out of a reason or a purpose or a problem to solve. But really, what are they here and what purpose are they here to serve? Why should the consumer choose you? So what are you bringing to their life that solves a problem, that entertains them, that brings them information, but in some way is adding value to their life? Who are we for? So, what is the thing that you do and who do you take care of and in what way? Who and what inspires us? I think I think this group of founders, but also the organization of BrainTrust, as a whole, is a really great example of nurturing the things that inspire you, bringing you additional things that can inspire you over time, but really keeping focus on why you're doing this. And that core really is why you exist. What do you want to represent in your current landscape? So where do you fit within the category and how are you going to win? And then what role do you play in culture? So, where do you fit into the overall sort of what's happening in the world and what problem are you here to help solve? Or what sort of solution do you bring to the table that helps in the minds of both, the world and your consumer? Some examples of strong brands are obviously ones that we know, and the reason that they are very popular and them is because they are consistent and very strong in the way that they are branding their products while also, kind of tapping into what's happening in the world. Nike, to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. If you have a body, you're an athlete. I think they are a good example of being consistent over time, but they really do shift with what's happening in the world. They shift with what's happening within the consumers, but also, what is their place to bring that sort of brand statement to life? Another one that I like a lot is Google. So, again, Google has expanded its reach into a lot of different areas as it grew, but to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. So everything they do is really in service to this useful and accessible sort of making life better. Another one that I love that's not on here is Patagonia and or REI. Both have really are rooted in what they do, but everything that they do is in service to their mission to a better world and a better relationship with the environment. Again, everything they touch, all of their initiatives with their internal teams, even their decisions to close on, Black Friday so people could get outside. So it's really consistent in how they're talking about their brand and the themes that they sort of carry throughout. Give us a thumbs up if these are things that you've thought about for your brand. We'd love to hear at the end anything that you all are doing, have done, or has helped just sort of keep focus on how you can consistently build your brand in a way that also touches every touch point for you and your consumer. So flexing with the times also means meeting your consumers where they care. We're very huge on not just talking at people, but really being a part of the conversation. Again, it seems fairly straightforward, but I think it's always really worth reiterating when we're talking about what we're doing here, that attention, culture, and empathy are always important when you're talking to your consumer and really figuring out what you should be talking about to your consumer. A lot of times marketers, I feel like, are in a space that is for marketing in their mind, but they are just speaking about themselves. So imagine going to a party and just talking about yourself the whole time and not listening to what anyone else is talking about and not really engaging in any kind of back and forth conversation. That's where, I think we really believe that attention really is captured through listening and sort of empathetic back and forth with your consumer. What's going on in their world? Where do you have the right to be involved in that conversation? And how can you really insert yourself in a way that feels authentic? Jess, do you have anything to add there? I know this is your wheelhouse as well.
No, I think you covered it. I would only re-emphasize that coming from the perspective of user first and following consumer attention are some of the most important things you can do. At the end of the day, everything we do is about our brand, but it's not for our brand, it's for the end user. So even though as founders, you're uniquely attached and connected to your brand, you have to remember that at the end of the day, you exist to serve other people. And that thinking from the user first can ultimately, help you in everything else that you do because it's coming from a place of empathy.
Amazing. Perfect. Great. So how can you uniquely contribute to the moment? First, you need to think like a publisher. I think this is a huge piece of what we believe in and really have seen to work really well for our clients. Make sure that we're interesting and we have a purpose. So again, when you're looking at how you're talking to the people in the world, and Jess will talk a little bit more about how you should go about doing that, keep in mind when you're coming up with content ideas or you're really kind of building all of the building blocks around who you're talking to and what matters to them, make sure that you're really communicating with them in a way that is both either educational or in some way enriching their life with humor or something that matters to them, right? If someone is really in it to learn more about your product and really wants to understand all the benefits that you have to offer because you have a benefit rich product offering, then give them that information. And that's a conversation that feels organic, authentic, and meant to be. If it's someone who really just wants to know it's going to make me look great, and you kind of get into the psychology of what matters to them, burying them with a lot of information educationally might be a turnoff to them. So make sure that whatever we're doing, like a publisher would think, is either interesting or has a purpose with the consumer that we're talking to. How are you going to continue the conversation, and how are you going to continue the loyalty that they will have with you because you've brought value to them? Bringing brands closer to their consumer by understanding the intersection between these things is a really huge part of what we do as well. So again, knowing yourself, knowing your audience, knowing what's happening in culture, and that is where you should exist, at the intersection of those things. So why do you exist? What matters to your audience? And what's happening in the world that you have, a right to speak about, but also brings you relevance in their lives. So again, when you're looking to create new content and also relationships, reinforcing your brand and putting your brand into the zeitgeist in a way that is going to bring in new consumers, a huge part of that is what part of the conversation are you in, and is it relevant to them? And then obviously you being consistent with your messaging throughout is really that sort of 1-2 punch, or jab, jab, right hook, as we would say, because it makes content relevant. Really is again, taking context, yourself and the brand, and what's going on with your consumers, to really bring those things together to figure out how we can play in their lives, how we can relate to the now, and what we can mean to them to create this loyalty and this relationship that hopefully is long-term. Jess is going to take us through a little bit more on how to create content. So this is going to be more specific once you have sort of the brand infrastructure and you really kind of take a look at where you are, why you exist, and we'll give you some tools to kind of gut check those in some way. We will then sort of come back in and talk to you about how to literally do the content creation process, then how to apply those to each of the platforms uniquely. Because again, if you think of the platforms like a party, they're all different vibes that you want to bring the right sort of tone and relationship to. And then again, with the end, we'll talk about the community management piece. So creating content. Jess, do you want to jump in here?
You got it. So what we can do after this is actually send out an editable version of this framework that we're about to walk through. So each of you can do that as an exercise for your brand. But we found that kind of putting pen to paper and thinking through all of these different things in bigger, broad strokes is actually really helpful for helping you narrow down to what makes good content on a day-to-day basis. So this is kind of the first step in that process. We think about you and your role. So identifying your North Star in 1 to 2 or even 3 sentences, but in brief, what is your organization all about? And this is really important because it shouldn't just be about what you do. What is your larger purpose? For example, one of the organizations that we did this exercise with was a dance company. And as we worked through their North Star, they originally positioned themselves as a dance company when they answered this question. But that's just what they do. It's not who they were or why they exist. So what we ultimately got to was that they're not just a dance organization, they're an organization that is hoping to help the next generation of creative people express themselves freely. That's something deeper and bigger, and it's tied into a human truth and an emotion, which ultimately is at the core of what we do. So this can be a tough one to figure out, but it's a really important piece of the puzzle because it can impact everything else that you do. Similarly, your biggest enemy. This is probably a little bit easier to come by since I know that as founders, you face really unique and individual challenges every single day. But if you take a step back and look at the big picture, what are you solving for? Why did you create your business? What are you trying to fix out in the world? What's that challenge? What need are you meeting? And also, as you're on the path to doing that, what challenges are you facing? Do you have a lack of awareness? Do you feel that people aren't satisfied with your product? Is a competitor doing something that's one step ahead of you? Again, identifying all of these things, and of course, this is all open to change because your business changes over time, can really help you understand how you should be angling your content to help you solve some of those challenges. And thank you for jumping in, Nikki. I love that. That is 100% correct. Next up, and this should be an easy one because we're all our own cheerleaders here in the founder world. Defining your own ownable proof points. We say ownable proof points. This could be defined as an RTV, reason to believe. You could even think of it as a benefit, right? But define the things that you feel you're bringing to the table that add value to a consumer or whoever it is that you're trying to reach. So once you have those things down, you have a pretty clear understanding of who you are, why you exist, the challenges you face, and why people should care. Then we move on to knowing your audience. And this is another fun one that you really have to think through. You want to make it super specific. So not just women aged 25 to 40 who are, Black or Hispanic, but you want maybe women who have grown up in an environment where they were forced to adhere to Western beauty standards, and they're now struggling in their 30s to accept their natural beauty and their natural selves, right? Because that really starts to get at a specific state of mind. Do this exercise for each of your different audiences. If you're one consumer, but the things who the person is, but what are their whys? What are their tensions and behaviors as well? Which kind of brings you down to the next section, the consumer tensions and behaviors. Jumping off the last example I gave, that could be something like, one tension is that there still isn't enough representation of natural beauty in the media, right? So those Western beauty ideals are still being reinforced on a daily basis, which contributes to people's level of discomfort with themselves. Or it could be something like they really want to start wearing their hair natural, but they don't know where to start because they don't have the right education. Or it could be that there hasn't been enough availability historically of products that are right for their hair. So they feel like there isn't a service that caters to them. But identifying those different need states for all of your audiences, again, it gives you a problem to solve that you can answer with content. And that kind of brings us to the bottom of this sheet, which is how do you make that into content? How can you use what you know about yourself, who you are, the challenges you face, and people's reasons to believe in you to speak to the unique challenges and need states of your consumers and turn that into content? And that could be anything. It could be a video. It could be that piece of education that is a tutorial on how to care for your natural hair. It could be having a more diverse representation of natural beauty in all of your content to help correct that disadvantage in the media. It could be advertising the value of your product if expense is a concern with other items in the category. But this really helps create a clear path that's informed by strategy and informed by users to create content that's going to resonate or that's more likely to resonate. Of course, not everything is going to work 100% of the time, but by creating content from the perspective of being human first and strategy first, you get yourself much more likely to kind of hit the center of the Venn diagram, so to speak, which is the intersection of consumer, company, and culture. So some things to keep in mind when creating content. Again, I know that, of course, having seen that chart, everyone's brain is already just like going, thinking about how you would fill it out. And also maybe panicking a little bit, like, how am I going to execute on this? This feels pretty overwhelming. Just take a deep breath and remember, there's not one way to do this. Even though process can help you figure out the best way to get things done, it's just a tool. It's not a rule book. So feel free to flex to your needs as you explore how you execute this for your brand. And then even though we really emphasize and pound home like strategy first, user first, sometimes the idea comes first, and that's okay. You just need to be able to take those ideas and organize them into buckets and themes that make sense for your brand. So if you have a really incredible idea for an influencer partnership with someone in your space, just take the second to think about, how does that ladder back to everything I'm doing? And let that shape the messaging around the initiative, right? There's always a way to work in some kind of strategy and make it feel cohesive with the rest of your messaging. Other times themes will develop first and then you ideate against them. So really all that boils down to is just listening, always keeping your ears and eyes open for what people are talking about, for what you're hearing as far as feedback from your consumers, what you're hearing from your retail partners, even anything like that. Just like let those things percolate. And as ideas begin to pop up, just take note of them, document them, always be writing things down and collecting them in a central place, and then carve out time for yourself, maybe once a week or once a month, to sift through all of those ideas and figure out, again, how do they fit into this framework, or maybe do some brainstorming around how you can shape them to fit into that framework. It's okay to be organized chaos. For those who were here early on the call, I think you probably heard me making a comment about how I barely got my puppy to daycare this morning and definitely didn't have time to do my makeup. Like, I know we've all been there. It is, women bear a lot of burden, both in terms of what we have to do physically and what we have to keep up with, but also mental load. So like, just have grace with yourself and remember that doing something is better than doing nothing at all. And then, of course, to start, focus on quality over quantity. Don't feel like you have to be pushing out 50 pieces of content a week. If you get to 1 a week, that's better than none a week. This is a fun one. Give a thumbs up or shout out in the chat if you have been overwhelmed by the thought of creating content at any point as you've founded your business. And I'm really, yeah, sometimes, okay, cool. I get it. Sometimes there's going to be some days when it feels like you have all the ideas and the creative juices are flowing and you can just go, go, go. And then there are going to be others when like it's just completely dried up and you're just panicking, like, what am I going to post tomorrow? I need to post tomorrow. What am I going to do? So I totally understand. But I also think that if you create a framework like this, oh, I love that. 100%. You think that just because you're the one managing your own time, that means you're going to have time for everything. But the reality is it makes it so much harder because you're making all of the decisions. It's crazy. It's 100% crazy. But this is a good opportunity to reevaluate and to think about what type of structure and thought processes you can kind of lock in and put in place that'll help you shortcut later on when you are overwhelmed with other things. You can go ahead, E. Thank you. So 3 things. If you have any photos for your brand, for your product, any photos from fans on social media or that have been to you through by email, that of course you have permission to use, or even just access to a cell phone camera, you can create content. You can go ahead, E. And in fact, you probably have a lot more content than you think. So again, this is just another structure to out when it comes to creating content and less the burden of creating, so you can get the most out of the little time you do have. And this is what we call sweating the assets, which kind of sounds a little bit gross, but you know that sensation when you have like a wet towel or washcloth, or even a sponge, and you know before you're trying to squeeze everything you can out of it. The same thing applies to content here. With just one piece of what we call hero or pillar content, you can use that theme and that piece of content to create infinite more pieces of content as well. So let's say you have a long video or a podcast recording or another kind of audio, you can post that in full, of course, but you can also mine it for additional social content. So if there's a 15-second clip of that, or even a 6-second clip, or there's a line that sounds really good, or maybe a blooper or an outtake or something funny happened, that's where you get your cut downs in your editorial. So how can you take this big thing that may be 10, 20 minutes long and chop it into smaller bits and pieces? And that can be based on individual narratives. You could even say, great, how can I take this video and turn it into something editorial? Can it be a blog post? Can it become multiple different articles that touch on different themes? Just think about what kind of can grow out of this thing that you've already planted, right? And then from there, digital and social content almost becomes easy, right? Take a screen grab from the video and post it with a commentary on what was happening in the moment. Turn that 6-second clip into a little GIF. Maybe, like I said, there's a blooper or an outtake. Maybe there's just a really good sound bite or a quote, or multiple quotes from these things that you want to take and feel would, make sense on your social channel. But just instead of constantly coming at this from a place of what am I going to do next, instead kind of turn that focus inward and think, what do I already have and how can I transform it? Suggestions on how to use content from a lifestyle show. It was featured during a segment. Yes, I love this. So of course you have that entire segment, right? About, and this is getting really specific, but Nikki, about how long is the video that you have? And if you don't have a quick answer, it's okay. But I'm assuming it's, it's more than like it's more than 30 seconds long. It's going to be at least a few minutes long. So first and foremost, you can post that video in its entirety on Instagram or even on TikTok. You can take a moment in that video that's cool, like your product being held or placed on a table, and you could turn it into like edit it with a kind of iPhone video editor into like a boomerang style piece of content. You could take screen grabs from that moment and give some commentary. You can take screen grabs or quick clips of moments from when someone is talking with a little bit of a sound bite or a quote of what was said. There are a million different ways that you could swing this. It depends a little bit on the footage. So of course, I'm just throwing broad ideas out there, but I would imagine that from a clip like that, you can get, 10, 20, of course, that's a little generous, but like probably around 10, 15 pieces of content if you're really, digging deep and thinking through how not just you can use the content within the context in which it was created, but also how you can repurpose it to tell a different story. Is there a really great shot of someone holding product in their hand that just becomes a general product post and has nothing to do with the segment? Things like that. So once you begin to look at these things as just assets that and you kind of take them at face value, it becomes much easier to start to think outside of that original context in which they were created and ultimately get more out of it. Cool. And I would reckon that all of you, being founders as you are in this day and age, have a really good understanding of how to make content already. You know how to use a camera on a smartphone, I'm sure. You've probably used third-party apps to add branding or filter or edit your image content. I am a huge advocate for Canva. I think it's a really easy to use tool that's really powerful, but I know a lot of people also like Over. And even just for editing your photos, there's in-camera editing tools that are really robust. You have iMovie on your phone. You have editing, native editing functionalities and filters within all of the major social channels. And even third-party apps like Visco or Lightroom Mobile that are really great resources depending on your skill level and how in-depth you want to get with your editing. But you can do all of this from your phone. And then writing, right? Like just think about what you would want to hear if you were a user, right? Go back to that place of empathy and addressing those consumer tensions and behaviors and need states, and relate that back to those ownable RTBs and your why, your reason to exist. And there's your copy. And don't be afraid to put something out there, even if it's not perfect. Just continue to iterate it and refine it over time. Like anything else, this is a skill that you build and you will see progress. Again, just take that deep breath and remember you scale what's scalable first. So are there different templates you can make or areas where you can create really quickly and easily? Where's the low hanging fruit? So like, what's the screen grab? What's the simple image that you put text or what's the quick audio clip that you can take? Like, don't overwhelm yourself again with trying to post 50 pieces of content a week. Maybe try for 3 really good ones and leave it at that, and don't overextend yourself. Also remember that people on the internet have the memory of a goldfish, right? People are going to forget bad content unless you're doing something just absolutely egregious and offensive, which I imagine that all of you, as mostly like women of color in our current social climate, would not be inclined to do. Like people are going to forget, right? Bad content is really easily forgotten and you have to get uncomfortable to grow. So even if something receives a bad reaction, don't let that impact you doing it again tomorrow and trying something different, because ultimately you will be able to find right. Create a cadence. Consumers are creatures of habit, and so are we, especially with such busy schedules. So if you establish a posting schedule that works for you, again, this is one place where you can put you first instead of the user. And you know that every, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9 to 10, you have that 30 minutes after you drop the kids off and you have to like start doing other things. Take that 30 minutes and let it be your content creation time. Let it fit into your schedule where it makes sense. And ultimately, consumers will follow you. You have an opportunity to lead this. Content's a long game. Results take time. So try something new, not just once, but multiple times before you call it quits. And as far as thinking about engagement, likes are great and they look really good on your metrics, but ultimately higher value engagement is what matters when you're thinking about whether or not something is successful. So if you have one post with like 1,000 likes and no comments, but you have another post with maybe 100 likes, but like 12 comments, look at the comments and take that information to heart, because that is a much higher value engagement than a like. And then last of all, posted is better than perfect. I would say this again and again, and if I could, and like emblazon it on this deck and give it to you, but throw perfection out the window. Having something posted is better than nothing at all, because you really just want to have an ongoing connection and show signs of life to your community. And of course, you don't have to do it alone, right? There are 9 different founders on this call who all have the opportunity to support one another as you embark on this content creation journey. So stay in touch with one another, exchange contact information, hold weekly or monthly brainstorm sessions together. At the end of the day, this is a movement that we're all a part of, and we're here for a reason, right? So let's use the resources we have, come together as a community and support one another in creating great content. And the same thing applies to your friends, your family, your community, thought leaders or peers in your space who aren't a part of BrainTrust, right? Even your audiences. This is something that people are really hesitant to do, but ask your audience how they feel about things. If you're thinking about a new product development, ask them to choose between 2 different things. Ask open-ended questions. Again, like the best way to continue to tailor your offering and your content to reach the audiences that you want to reach is to take cues and take the lead from them. So don't be afraid to use Instagram stories or even in-feed posts to ask questions and then pay attention to the answers. Cool. So I know I've heard some really positive feedback in the chat over here, but is everyone now feeling a little bit more empowered and confident about how you can make the content creation process a little easier and more efficient? Amazing. I'm so glad to hear that. Cool. So next we're going to talk about social platforms, and this is where things get a little bit complex. So if you have questions, definitely drop them into the Q&A function, and we'll be sure to come back to them at the end of this. But yeah, let's dive on in. So we're going to go through all of the major platforms and talk a little bit about best practices and just things you should know as you move forward. And of course, this will be sent to you as kind of a takeaway from this call, so you'll have all of this to refer to. So first up is Facebook. Obviously Facebook, which is now Meta, is one of the longest standing social platforms. It's been used for a really long time, and it has that kind of behind the scenes connection with Instagram as well. Facebook's offering has evolved a lot since it first came online, but here are a few things that we know about the platform right now. Video is the storytelling format. If an image is worth 1,000 words, video is worth even more. Video content performs best with Facebook in terms of maintaining an audience and making a brand impression. Seeing how popular video is and how it's being prioritized on Instagram, on TikTok, and even more and more on Twitter and LinkedIn, that's not a surprise. Users are really starting to see video as a thing that they want to engage with. It's entertainment for them, and it's also educational. So the more video content that you can push out, the more likely you will be to be favored by the algorithms, even when it comes to organic, even though organic reach doesn't really exist much anymore, except for on TikTok. But also, see what your audience responds to as well. Vertical video is like the thing, which kind of brings me to the next point. 4:5 ratio, which is portrait oriented, like vertical content, is what wins in the feed right now. And really, this applies to any platform that exists right now, especially those that kind of have a single stream or a feed of content. Because at the end of the day, it's all about taking up as much real estate as possible on the screen. So when you have a square image or something that's landscape oriented versus something that's vertical, if everyone's holding their phones like this, that vertical imagery or video is going to take up the entire screen and give you their complete attention for however long they sit on it. And that's really, really valuable as compared to, posting an image that they're just going to scroll by. So of course, everything that I just said about testing and learning and figuring out what makes sense for your audience is perfect. But a general best practice is to focus on portrait-oriented content and especially on video. With that video, you really want to try to capture consumer attention in the first second. So what you see a lot of them doing is using really kind of creative or outrageous or almost clickbaity thumbnails to get people to stop scrolling and look, which of course you can do that and it works, but there are also, more brand oriented and less clickbaity ways to do that. But think about what is the most compelling thing you can show people, whether it's just branding, visuals, really attention-getting messaging that you can show them within the first second to ensure that they're going to sit and watch the rest of your content. Similarly, a lot of environments aren't appropriate to have sound on as you're watching content these days, and everyone is scrolling on their phone everywhere, even when they can't actually listen to what's happening. So always be mindful of designing for a sound off environment, and add easy to read captions. If the platform you're using has an automatic caption generator, absolutely use it, because that's not just a tool that's great for sound off environments, but it's also an accessibility tool, which means that more people in more places will be able to engage and view your content. Similarly, if they don't have the automatic captioning that works with accessibility tools, you can also just add, captions on the screen as well, which in a platform like Instagram and TikTok is really easy to do. So what's a good length for a video? And the question is that we don't really know, and it depends on a lot of different factors. Recent media learnings from campaigns that we've run suggest that the top performing videos are 15 seconds or less. But if your content is really compelling, you may find that longer videos perform just as well. You may also find that images perform better than video. So again, the rule of thumb is to put a lot of different things out there and then pay attention to the metrics and to your engagement to get a good understanding of what is actually working and resonating, so you can focus more of your energy there. Last of all, explore Facebook groups. These have really blown up in the past few years, whereas before they were kind of an underused aspect of Facebook. But this is a really great way to kind of consolidate your community into one space and generate more intimate and niche discussions that are kind of from and for your users. So you might consider how your business could use groups to start targeted conversations that maybe don't belong on the main page. So for example, if you make your group kind of exclusive, like it's for beta testing, maybe that's where you ask a lot of your question content to get feedback from your community. Or maybe there's something controversial that's happening that your brand has a voice in, but that you don't necessarily want to have, play it out in your public feed. Also, maybe it's a place for you to provide more hands-on customer support as well. But either way, there's a lot of value that can be brought both to you as a brand and to your community by creating a space like this that's just for them. How to maximize your efforts on Facebook. First and foremost, use what people are doing already to your advantage. People consume content differently across different places in the platform. So Facebook gives you a lot of different options. It's become very diverse in terms of its offerings over the years. You can watch videos. Facebook has kind of an episodic, almost channel style offering now that's kind of like YouTube. You can browse content, you can browse the feed, you can share, and you can, click through to other things. So take into account all of the possible ways that people could to interact with your content, and then get creative about how you inspire them to complete those actions. Second, create a space for users to learn more. Oh, and that was really specific to a client, so I'm sorry that made it into this deck. But think about like how you can like use a thing like groups or even your comment section to start conversations that are specific to your brand. Like even if you as a brand or in a piece of content, you don't really have the time to get super in depth about things, definitely use that time spent like in your comments or in those specific places like groups to have those deeper conversations and build relationships with your community. Which brings me to the last point, build community around your brand. Leverage things like Facebook groups and even just good old-fashioned community management, which Elizabeth is going to touch on after I get through platforms, to gain those insights and build an active community that can ultimately affect business decisions and the growth of your business over time. Go ahead. Perfect. Now we'll dig into Instagram, which is Facebook's, like, I guess the really misogynistic way to say it would be Facebook's younger, hotter sibling. A lot of the same things that we see on Facebook apply here on Instagram. Vertical content is still really important in the feed as it takes up the most visual real estate. So continue to use that to your advantage here. And you can even think about, if the content is right, repurposing content between the two platforms since their feeds have become really similar. Again, we want to capture attention in that first second, and this is going to be true across any platform we talk about that has video. For Instagram stories, you really want to design for sound on, because when people are scrolling through stories, audio has become a much more important part of that. This is a space where you want to kind of, do the selfie video and talk to camera. It's a little more intimate, behind the scenes. It's a place for you to give commentary instead of just educating or posting regular content. Keep your profile up to date. Something that I've seen as I've been kind of working more in the web and user experience space is that people use Instagram the way that we used to use yellow pages, like the phone book. It's really funny because if you like Google something that you're looking to find on the internet, 9 times out of 10, people are finding brands through their Instagram accounts, not through a Google listing or not just searching for their website. So keeping that profile up to date is really important. Make sure all of your links are accurate and timely, and that your story highlights are constantly being added to so that it's clear that you're active. And you can almost think of your Instagram profile as like a mini website, right? You want to give people a lot of different ways to find out more information about what you're doing or to purchase your product. So to that end, we recommend a service kind of like Linktree, or there are a million others at this point, to house a variety of different links in your bio where you can send followers to the things that are most relevant to them and to your recent content, whether it's an article, a product, a website, an event that's happening, another social partner, specific like, press release or piece of content about a partnership, a video, anything like that. As consumers of content, I'm sure that you know how these types of things are used, especially on Instagram and TikTok. The link in bio, that's like your entire hub. That's where everything lives. With Instagram TV, this is where we kind of see longer content going. This is where you have longer form tutorials, kind of back and forth conversations, or content that's taken from a podcast, Q&A sessions, etc. You can film directly in the app, or you can upload to posts, so whatever you're more comfortable with, but definitely make sure you're keeping to that vertical format for the style of content. And then going live too. This is a great way to interact directly with your community in a real-time format. And some of the teaser and kind of fun, excitement driving content that you can use leading up to this is also a really great way to engage with your community. You can respond to comments on your live stream in real time. You can do a co-streamed live with other influencers, experts, even community members, if you want to kind of give them their 15 minutes of fame, right, with talking with their brand, and other organizations. And then even it's a way for you to help bridge the virtual gap by streaming live from an event that you're attending or an event that you're holding. So again, Instagram and especially lives is a really great way to kind of give a curated feed, but also store information, give people kind of a behind the scenes look into what you're doing and take them with you, and really have great conversations and kind of get the community engaged. How to maximize your efforts there. Compete with the feed. So Instagram is kind of like a digital museum, right? It's more curated, especially now in the feed. And remember that in addition to seeing your content, they're also seeing like content from influencers and content from other brands and the new baby pictures of their, new niece and everything. So consider what you see in your feed and also recognize that other people are seeing the same types of things. And then use that as inspiration to think about how you can make your content different or more thumb stopping, as we say, so you can get that engagement that you're looking for. Again, I'll drive home vertical video on Instagram, and especially Instagram stories and IGTV are places, excuse me, where you can kind of take a behind the scenes view and show your authentic selves, talk to the camera, show them what's happening behind the scenes in your lab or in your warehouse. Order packing videos have become so huge on Instagram and on TikTok. There's so many different things that you can do that you wouldn't necessarily think of as content right off the bat, but that people are just going to eat up because it gives them more of you. It makes them feel special, like they're getting an intimate view that other people can't see. And then remember that on Instagram, like on TikTok and Twitter, and even to some extent LinkedIn, discoverability is driven by hashtags. So by researching hashtags and adding the ones that are relevant to your posts and even tagging other brands and creators and peers, this is how you kind of can drive more organic, if you will, engagement and discovery of your brand and your account. So ask questions. Like a really popular tactic we use is posing a question in the post copy, the copy that goes along with your content, that encourages like tagging a friend or tag someone who, or, things like that, tag someone who would love this. That's a really great way to drive additional awareness and discovery of your brand and your account. Cool. Let's talk about Twitter. So go ahead, Mickey. Thank you. Twitter is kind of an interesting platform for brands, and this is one of the ones that we don't necessarily recommend for everyone. If you are dealing in a space that where your audience is on Twitter, then yes, be on Twitter. Excuse me. If you feel like you're the kind of brand who wants to jump into conversations and kind of be that Wendy's or Taco Bell or the other fast food place that did really well, I guess Wendy's and Taco Bell is fine. But if you want to be that type of personality who's like a real conversation starter, do it on Twitter. That's great too. But not everyone needs to expend energy on Twitter because it may just not be the right place for you. That said, if you do want to get on Twitter, here are some things that can kind of help drive your strategy there. Don't just retweet someone, quote retweet them. And that means that instead of just posting someone else's content to your feed, you're actually adding your own additional thoughts and commentary to what you're retweeting. And if you're going to be on Twitter, it's because you need to have an active voice, right? You're part of a conversation and you have something to say. So show that active voice and give your 2 cents. Don't be afraid. Everyone's the same size on Twitter, if that makes sense. So even if you're a small brand, you can still have a big voice in a place like Twitter. Twitter is all about time. Even though they've kind of created an algorithm that sorts what you're shown in the feed, timely content is still really important on Twitter, since it's kind of the one platform that really tracks closely with events that are happening in real time. So when you post, think about if your tweet makes sense for right now, or if it's something that can be posted later. But on Twitter, more than other platforms, it's really easy to miss the boat you're jumping into a conversation or on a trend. So try to get content out there as quickly as possible and be a first mover. Go fishing. This is something that we actually recommend on Instagram as well, and even on TikTok, honestly, but on Twitter especially, this is a place where you can kind of do some discovery and jump into relevant conversations, trends, announcement, news, and pop cultural happenings that will keep your brand top of mind as things are happening. So like, let's say, for example, there's a celeb who has a really bad hair day on the red carpet and they're captured and people are buzzing about it. If you're a hair care brand, reach out and say, hey, know you had a rough one today. How can we help? But like, don't be afraid to insert yourselves into conversations, but also be mindful of the fact that you and your brand may not want to touch certain topics, or you may not feel that you have permission to speak in certain areas. With things that are really heavy, definitely, bear that in mind. If it's politics, if it's religion, if it's something tragic that happens in the news, maybe those are things that you don't touch unless you're, doing something really appropriate to offer your support. But also don't be afraid to speak up if part of what your brand ethos is having a strong voice in a certain area. Just know that like, once you put that out into the universe, you're going to have to live by it and back it up. Use multiple photos to your advantage. If you do use images, leverage Twitter's ability to include up to 4 images to draw comparisons, create little comics, or do a mini gallery. They appear as like a 4-image grid in the feed. And in addition to just uploading multiple images, you can also kind of create storytelling between the images or connect them somehow. You can get really creative with how that content works. And as per some of our more recent statistics, people are more than 3 times likely to engage with tweets that contain videos and photos. So definitely, if all you can shoot out is a text-based tweet, great. But experiment with doing more rich content on Twitter and see what happens. Kind of speaking to what I was mentioning earlier about timeliness and trends, keep a finger on the pulse of what's happening by following other people. So creating lists of content that's relevant to you and your brand and following other influencers. It could be like a school in the area. It could be a competitor. It could be social organizations. It could be other major brands that are in your category will help you stay on top of everything that's happening. And that just kind of boils down to being social listening. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in community management as well. Get creative here with emojis and use ASCII graphics to make memes. I'm sure you've seen that. There's a really good example of the shrug guy and of how people have gotten super creative on Twitter with making really complex art using just regular keyboard characters as well. With Twitter's legacy as a text-based platform, using emojis or those kind of keyboard characters to make art or memes or just do something really creative and kind of almost take a text-based tweet and turn it into an image by getting creative with the characters you're using. It can be much more thumb-stopping in the feed than just a regular text-based piece of content. And it can also kind of help you stay on top of trends and memes. How to maximize your impact on Twitter. So personalize your community engagement. Twitter is really a place to have one-on-one conversations with people who engage with you. So if you're going to retweet someone, include their personal handle, respond to them, and make sure that your response to them is public so people can see that you're engaging directly with users. This is a great place to kind of, I've seen a lot of customer service on Twitter. There was a period like a few years ago when everyone was just tweeting at airlines to help them. And that was a much easier way to get access to customer support than actually dialing in on the phone. But we still continue to see that a lot of people who have things to say are reaching out to brands on Twitter. So this is a really good opportunity to show people, not just tell people, that kind of you stand by your word or you deliver on your promise to them. Leverage Twitter for phishing. Again, in the same way that you should be engaging with conversation that comes to you, definitely be sure to seek it out proactively as well. It gives you an opportunity to jump into conversations that are relevant to your brand and therefore bring more people to your page who may end up following you or otherwise engaging with you. And then surprise and delight. This is a really fun one. So in the same way that I've encouraged you to personalize that engagement and really kind of get one-on-one with consumers, actually kind of putting a little bit more behind that and surprising and delighting them with something that's special, whether it's a free product or a coupon code or sending them a coffee or anything like that. It's really good for your cred, especially if you do it in a way that people can see it publicly. And it's just generally good karma. If you do good for people, it's going to come back to you, and everyone on the internet loves free stuff. Go ahead on to the next one. You're good. YouTube, next up, where square and vertical video are becoming popular in some capacities on YouTube. It's still very much a traditional video platform. And that means that 16:9 formatting, which is kind of the strong landscape orientation, is still going to reign supreme on YouTube. YouTube is also a place where kind of people go with their eyes open. So instead of just scrolling mindlessly, people are usually going to YouTube because they're searching for something specific, whether it's a tutorial or a song or a really funny video that they've watched before. They're going there to find something specific, and they're doing it with the knowledge that it's going to be video. So we've actually found that whereas on other platforms, people are just kind of scrolling vertically, on YouTube, people are actually turning their phones to watch content. Thumbnails will get people watching. This is where you see all the crazy clickbaity content, like the person with a shocked face with the text that says like, "You'll never believe the conversation that I had with my friend last night," things like that. But even though that's a little bit overkill, getting creative with the thumbnail, which is the preview image that you see for a video on YouTube, can be a great way to get people interested in your content if they're discovering you organically. Unlike on a lot of other platforms, longer form content is okay and even encouraged, again, because people are going in with their eyes open and they're looking for something specific, and they're willing to commit the time it takes to engage to digest that content. Especially in the organic space, YouTube is an awesome place to post your longer form content. Doesn't have to be feature length, like an hour and a half, but if you have a 5, 10, 15, even 20 or 45-minute video, it's much more likely to get engagement on YouTube than it is anywhere else. The interesting thing about YouTube being owned, especially that it's owned by Google, is that instead of its search being super heavily algorithm based, it operates like a search engine. It has a lot of the same kind of functionality almost as Google. So when you're writing your the titles of your videos and your descriptions and captions, you kind of have to write with SEO in mind. So make sure your titles and descriptions and all of your video tags include what you think are keywords that people might be researching. Or if from a web perspective, you have done or you intend to do like SEO and keyword research, or you've had it done for you, give it a try using that on YouTube in terms of the language that you're using and the content you upload there and in your tags, because that YouTube videos do come up like in Google search in addition to other listings. So being really careful and intentional about the language you use with the content that you upload can be a great way to drive additional discovery. And then clickbait works if you deliver. So we encourage you to create clever headlines and thumbnails that kind of get people wanting to click more. But you kind of have to put your money where your mouth is when it comes to that, and make sure that your content is actually, good enough to get it, or that you're not doing something that's intentionally misleading, or if you are misleading them, it's clear and it's you know, for a prank or a joke or something like that. As I'm sure, again, as content consumers, that you all have seen content that does this well, and then content that just leaves you feeling like you wasted a minute of your life watching it. So, yep, just be on the right side of that argument as best you can. Cool. Then moving on to TikTok, which is the platform of the hour, so to speak, or has been the platform of the last couple years. Go ahead. Yep. TikTok is such a cool platform. I'm not gonna lie, it took me a little while to wrap my head around it when it first came out, that it's probably the platform that I spend the most time on, because I find the content the most interesting and valuable to me, but also because it's just so interesting from like a communication psychology perspective to see how other people are engaging with things and how trends and behaviors on the platform are evolving. But these are a few things that you can take away. Lighten the mood. TikTok is a place that can house just about anything. There's a talk for anything, whether it's like food talk or beauty talk or skincare talk or book talk, or there's chicken talk. There is a niche on TikTok for everything. So you come across a lot of different like subcultures and types of influencers. It's so different from any other platform. That said, there's a lot of really weird, funny, and kind of awkward content that, rather than be embarrassing like it could be on another platform, is totally accepted and even celebrated on TikTok. Being silly and quirky rather than like super, super cool and together is actually like really valued by the TikTok audience. And something to remember is that right hooks don't do well on TikTok. And a right hook, Gary Vaynerchuk, our company's founder, wrote a book several years back called Jab, 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 Right Hook. And basically what that was doing was taking kind of the principles that are used in boxing and applying them to marketing. Like a jab represents a piece of content that adds value for your consumer. So it's something that they want to hear and something that they're going to be excited about. Whereas a right hook is something that's trying to sell. So like you have pieces of content that are educational or that are fun or that are funny. And then you have pieces of content that say buy this product, right? More so than other platforms, TikTok is the platform where you really want to focus on the jabs and on creating content that drives value. This is really easy to even see reflected in the ad units that TikTok offers. I'm sure you come across tons of posts in your feed that feel like they're just from a normal person, but then you look down at the bottom and they're actually sponsored or they're actually from a brand. So this is a place where you really do have to be on top of trends, where you almost have to like make peace with like bending your brand rules and guidelines. It's just so different from Instagram, whereas that's like a very curated, polished feed. TikTok is just like where everyone goes wild now, right? So just something to remember. Like everywhere else, you want to capture attention in the first second because it's super easy to just flip to the next video in TikTok. So you've got to hook them really, really early. You can do this with sound, you can do this with visuals, you can do this with on-screen text, all kinds of different things. Snackable videos. Most TikTok videos are 15 seconds or under, so make the most of it. Most people are scrolling through TikTok with the intent of watching a ton of different videos. However, TikTok has over time increased their time limits more and more and more. So like this is something to play with too. Probably most of your everyday content can be in that under 15-second range, but play a little bit with long form and see what happens. Practice makes perfect. TikTok has so many native tools and features for capturing and editing. So we encourage you to, again, post and post some more and continue to refine those skills over time. There's also a ton of creators on TikTok who are doing really cool tutorials for transitions and video editing and things like that. So don't be afraid to use the platform to make your content better. Last of all, trends, hashtag trends and challenges are like some of the major driving forces behind TikTok. So figuring out how to merge them with your brand can be the best way to gain attention. This is also just true broadly of trends, but if you see like a trending audio, if you see a trending dance, if you see a trending video format or meme or something like that, try to figure out if there's an opportunity for your brand to create a version of that that makes sense for you. Even if it's getting out of your comfort zone a little, it's a great way to gain visibility. And really quickly, before we move on from TikTok, I just want to add that there are definitely some questions as far as legality when it comes to using licensed audio on the platform. What we can send along as a resource is that TikTok has an entire music library that's been vetted and licensed for commercial use. So if you as a brand have any concerns about just using whatever audio is there, this can be a resource for you to use, maybe things that are more trending, or will at least give you an idea of what's safe to use. Additionally, if an audio is posted by a user or is created by a user within the platform, their end user license agreement stipulates that anything that's added to the platform becomes like free for everyone to use. So it's written into their legal documentation that you have the right to use that too for whatever purpose. Just be mindful of that. I don't think that any small business using a licensed piece of audio is ever going to end up in a lawsuit situation, but TikTok has put some valuable assets in place to help you navigate that if it's a concern. All right. Maximizing your efforts. Like I was just talking about, recognizable audio. The truth is that all of those popular songs and new audio clips from up and coming artists, movies, TV shows, anything like that, is fair game. Of course, and, acknowledging the legal considerations there. A lot of people search by audio, and I've definitely been known to find a trend that I think is absolutely hilarious or that I'm really into and just watch a bunch of videos under that audio. And that's a big way that people discover new brands and new accounts on TikTok. So try to jump in on that as much as you can. Certain audios are also just really attention getting in the feed. Engage in trends, be a part of the community, use the dance trends and challenges, use the memes. If you're stitching, if you're duetting, if you're using the same audio, it's a great tool for organic discovery. And then be raw and be authentic. Similarly to like Instagram stories or reels, this is a place for you to just be yourself. And people love seeing the person behind the brand on these channels. So use your phone to do selfies, doing something in kind of a scrappy homemade way. This is what the platform exists for. TikTok is almost like the antithesis of the curated, polished feed that you see on Instagram. So don't worry about having to make content that looks like it's movie quality. Cool. So I've been talking for a really, really long time. I feel like I'm going to lose my voice. But does everyone feel like that was kind of like a helpful rundown of some of the main points of the platforms and what's happening now? Like I said, this will be sent as a takeaway, but want to make sure everyone feels good now. I saw like one question come in, but I'm so glad. Oh, yay. Cool. Awesome. Well, I'm going to pass it back to Elizabeth then, and we'll talk a little bit about community management.
Great. Can you guys hear me? Yes. Okay. I'm going to assume that's a yes. All right. So we're going to dive into community management. I see we've only got about 13 minutes or so left, and I want to leave some time for questions. So we'll go quickly through this. So community management, sort of as a follow-up to what Jess just went through with all those platforms, is really strategically listening to your audience. Making sure you're engaging with them and answering questions, building relationships, making sure that we are having that, like we talked about at the beginning with brand, this one-on-one relationship with our consumer that is actually reciprocal. Community management is a huge part of that. So making sure that we're listening to what's happening on these platforms, making sure that we're listening to what we're getting back from the consumers from a Q&A standpoint, and really listening to the things that they're fired up about and that they are excited about. and making sure that we are sort of reacting to that in a way that is helpful and useful to us, but also really kind of engaging in this real authentic relationship with them. Let us know in the chat if you have someone who's doing this, or if this is something that you are responsible for, because we can answer any questions and sort of tricks and tips for that as well. But why it matters most is because really it's important to connect with your audiences in a one-on-one way. So the platforms, we're using those to answer the questions and to troubleshoot issues, but also, as you're putting things out into the world, listen to what they're saying and reacting to and help double down on those. But really it is a unique marketer's tool to be able to actually have a human interaction with your consumer in a way that feels real. And it's very important that within that, your community manager, the person who's responding on behalf of the brand, has a real conversation on these real topics that is authentic to your voice. So it's a huge opportunity to connect with members in a more emotional level, but really the audience needs to feel heard. So I mean, in making sure that you have, if you're doing it yourself, obviously that's one thing. If you are the brand, if you have someone else doing it, it's very important, I think, to make sure that they are absolutely they understand who you are, how you sound, what you would say, and as a brand, how you would react to the things that they're asking. Learnings and things to look out for. So on a regular cadence, it's important for you to really be looking at this type of data and digging in on ways that you can use this, to be more actionable in what you're doing, but also to be authentic in the relationship that you're building with them. So for account growth, what you're looking for is total fans, new fans across the platforms. Like these are sort of the ways that your KPIs, or the ways you would measure success. Top content is going to be top posts on each platform based on your organic reach. I don't know what just happened. Can you guys still see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it. I think you zoomed in. Try zooming out on your Mac with your like 4.
No, I didn't. Better?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know what just happened there, but so yeah, or looking at your top content through the function of organic reach, paid media insights and optimization. So, looking at the spend, the result optimizations and surroundings for your core media objectives and seeing if those are working, and obviously feeding into those channels in your paid media, what is working on organic. Organic is a great place to cull insights and to figure out what is resonating with your audiences. And that's, of course, what you would want to put fuel on to fuel that fire for your paid efforts. Audience insights and engagement opportunities. So actionable insights stemming from the actual engagement that you're getting from them. So finding curated opportunities to engage with your community, but really taking the one-on-one exchange that you're having with a lot of these different interactions and making sure that we are engaging with them, but also taking those insights to build on what we're doing moving forward. And then platform updates. This is tough, especially if you're sort of a one-person show, but the optimizations and opportunities in these platforms are always evolving. That is where kind of an agency does have an advantage as a partner, because they very often can sort of drive what's happening. They have very close relationships with these platforms, but there are places that you can go that give you kind of the scoop, right? You don't need to like actually go in and find this information for you all the time. So if you want any of those tips and tricks of places that you can be sort of getting the tea on what's happening on each of these platforms, then we can definitely help you with the skim of that versus having to kind of track that on your own. Amazing. So that's community management, pretty short and sweet, which is good because it gives us some opportunity to answer any questions that you guys might have here in the next 7 minutes. Let me see. I'm going to go back through the Q&A. Jess, are there any that they've addressed to you?
I see one in here.
Oh, Nikki, hashtags are challenging for me. How do I ensure that I'm using the right hashtags? Jess, can you jump in on that one?
For sure. Yeah. So the short answer is it's arbitrary.
Right.
And the more complex answer is that it really just takes research. So I would like take some time to look at, you know, what hashtags are competitors using, what hashtags are influencers using in the space that people are responding well to, what hashtags are your target audiences using, if you kind of see audiences of your competitors or of influencers that are in your category, and start using some of those, but also use those hashtags to kind of like find other hashtags too. So like, as you're looking at content that has that hashtag, once you pull it up, look through and kind of see what other hashtags are being used adjacent to that. And I'll give you a really good foundation to work from. It used to be that creating a new hashtag was a really good way to kind of create something that's centralized around your content. But at this point, with so much more volume of content and hashtags, it's harder to create something that's ownable unless you already have a ton of visibility. So again, I would just use kind of that category consumer and influencer research to get an understanding of what tags they're using and then jump on them.
Amazing. Thanks, Jess. And then I think, Ayura, we've got a question here from you on, you know, really trying to educate people as much as possible with the knowledge that you have as a scientist, on how and what's working. But really leaning in on pictures and videos to keep it short, but there's a disconnect. What can I do? I mean, I think creatively, obviously, you know, and I don't know the product. Can you say more about the products that you are specifically offering? Because I think that could help. Hair care. Yeah, I mean, I think that really leans into the audience, the psychology and you know, sort of what the need of the audience is based on your product. I mean, in the end, hair care, I feel like the end result is they want to see what it's going to make their hair look like, and they're excited about that. But I do think that the education, depending on who your core kind of bullseye target is very important. So, you know, for someone who is more educated on products, like benefits and or ingredients, they're really going to want to know more about your actual formula, what they're putting on their body, how it works, and they really have enough knowledge to be, you know, as you say, dangerous, as to whether or not that would work. But they know what they like and they know what they want to lean into. I think, you know, I mean, just speak up here on the creative side, but I would just say try it out. So try the things that are more educationally based, try the things that are more like thirst traps, like they're just a beautiful person of someone with great hair that used your product. You know, and I think if someone's asking for more information from a community management standpoint, absolutely lean in and give that information. But, you know, kind of test how much or how little you want to give them and see what people react to, and then do the thing that they're reacting to. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but that's what we do, is we monitor these things very closely and we lean in on the things that seemingly are working. I mean, you add to that if you want, Jess.
Yeah. So this is a space that's really interesting right now. Over the past like couple years during the pandemic, we've seen this huge surge of science-informed skincare and beauty brands that have popped onto the scene. That said, it's been a trend and it's been really successful for a reason. And that means that there are other brands who have already cracked the code. So I would absolutely encourage you to look at some of the brands who are doing it well, and also look outside of your category to see how other science-informed products are marketing across their channels. A few that comes to mind for me are Seed Probiotics. They're really heavily scientific information. They do a great job making it consumer friendly. Another one is Scene Hair Care. They're a dermatologist approved and informed and science-backed hair care solution. You might even look at like, again, super outside of your category, but there are a number of different like medical weight loss, like teledoctor weight loss programs that have popped up recently. Like there's one called Zoe and one called Calibrate. And then another called Found, and they're all doing a really good job of taking heavily technical things and tying them back to, as Elizabeth was saying, like the ultimate payoff, which is what people are looking for. So I would experiment with like looking at the types of content that they're creating and maybe trying to emulate some of those things for your brand and then tailoring it based on how people respond.
Love it. Love it. Love it. And then I think we've got time for one more question. How would you use your personal Instagram page as an extension of the brand page without being salesy? Jess, you got an answer for that?
So I do, but I also think you should speak to this first because you do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tricky because again, just like anything in a relationship. So think about platforms and your uses in them as like, I think of them as a party, right? So if someone is watching my personal Instagram page, they want to hear about me personally. I would say, and maybe I hope I'm doing this correctly for my own brands, or brand, but I would say that you do it to the extent that you feel people are engaging with it, or they're liking it, or they're telling you, hey, tell me more about this. If you are getting little engagement, if you're getting people bumping off things like stories and you see them leaving after they see that, you realize this might be a turn off. They're really here to see pictures of my dog. They're not really here for me to sell them the thing that I'm making. But I also think that people who know and care and are associated with you care about what you're doing. So there is a place for it. I feel like, and for me, it's in stories. It's not in my like actual feed unless there's something really exciting that's coming up new that I'm making, or something that I've been working on that I've been sort of teasing in my stories and then I now want to put it in my feed. I think that works. But again, knowing why they're there, why they're following you in that space, and then using it really respectfully. Honestly, that's what I would say. Again, if you are your brand, if you're, if you're a person who is a consultant, or you're like obsessed with health, or these are the things that are who make you, I think there's a little more space there. But when it's a product or something that you make, I feel like it's a respectful inclusion of who you are, while also giving them what they want while they're there, which is to hear more about you as a human. Jess, you have anything to add there?
Yeah. I would give it the same advice that I gave to answer the last question. I would look for brands and founders who are doing it really well. One that comes to mind for me immediately is Bounce Curl. It's a brand in the natural hair care space, and it's a Latina, woman owned business. And she does a really good job of kind of like creating a divide between content on the Bounce Girl page and content on her personal Instagram as well. And there are so many other brands out there that are doing a great job of this as well. If you gave me a few more minutes, I could probably come up with a list, but I would look again for people who are doing it well and figure out how you can emulate.
Awesome. Good. I think we are right at time. Thank you guys so much for your time. This was incredible. As we said, Gigi will be sending this deck out so you can kind of have it as a follow-up. And then additionally, we'll be sending sort of that North Star document that you can use and create and fill out on your own. So super excited to help. We are here if you have any questions. And Gigi, do you have anything you want to say in the wrap?
Just thank you guys so much for your time. This was an excellent class. And if there's any other fun things that you guys learned, please drop them in the chat. I know Elizabeth and Jess have to go, but I'll keep this going for another like 5 minutes so I can give you guys some general updates and just kind of get your overall feedback. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you guys. Have a good one.
Bye.
Yes. And if there are other questions that come through, feel free to just shoot them to us in an email, and we'd be more than happy to follow up and answer them.
Awesome.
Thank you guys for extending that.
Of course. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. For our founders, I would love to hear some direct feedback from you guys on how you think that class went. I think it was so informative. Please let us know anything that you thought was really helpful, anything that you learned, anything that you would want to follow up on. Go ahead and take this time and drop it in the chat. While you guys do that, I know in our last class we talked about the founders box. I can go ahead and pull up some slides on that really quickly just to give you guys a quick reminder. Give me one moment. All right, so reminder that we are starting our BrainTrust Founder Studio Founder Box. So we kind of teased it in the last meeting, but we're still collecting any interest in it. So what it will be is for a participation fee of $6.50 per month, 20 products per month, 20 note cards, and a 3-month minimum commitment. We can curate a box that will go to a monthly curated group of influencers selected by our experts at the BrainTrust agency. So if you guys are interested in this, please go ahead and fill out the link. I can drop it in the chat. It's also in the newsletter for you to reference. We'd love to see if you guys are interested and see how we can get this program going. All right. Well, I will leave it at that. Thank you guys so much for joining. We will upload this video and send out the slides for you guys so you can reference it in the future. And we really appreciate you. Thank you so much and have a great day.